And I think Libre, and this from reading, I suggest everybody read your piece. The takeaway I took from your dispatch was that Libre also suffered from extremely poor timing. You know, if their election, if you think about their election coming at the back end of 2021, you know, that's just as global inflation is really starting to hit. And Libre, any government in Honduras, you know, there's only so much they can do when it comes to their control over global forces. Like they're buffeted, you know, severely by movements in commodity prices, in the Federal Reserve interest rate policy. You know, so that alone, I feel like, probably made it like extraordinarily difficult for them to be set up for success. Yet Castro still wound up, you know, personally with a very high approval rating. And it feels like, you tell me, if she was constitutionally able to run for re-election, that with a 60+% approval rating, even if that's inflated by 10 points, she probably actually wins re-election. One of the things that she was in the news for here in the United States was her fight with the kind of crypto crowd, which saw in Honduras a place where they could test out their utopian/dystopian vision for basically what they call these kind of sovereign areas. And I've done some reporting on this, where in Honduras they would set up, they were called ZEDEs. These like you take like a kind of liberated economic zone that we understand around the world, and you just take it and put it on steroids. Like no government whatsoever except for the crypto company. And when I would engage with them for comment and for interviews, they would refer to themselves as like government ministers. Like they would talk about themselves. It's like, guys, come on, you don't have, like, nobody thinks you're a government, but they would say, you need to talk to our minister of transportation about this. You need to talk to our minister of communications. Like, you don't have a minister. You're a company. Stop. But so Juan Orlando Hernández had gifted them with these, actually, as he was the head of this assembly when he pushed it through, and then as president, helped enact it, these basically countries run by crypto lords, which then Castro took away. Then the crypto guys sued her at the World Bank, which is incredibly ironic, by the way, for a libertarian to go to a global institution like the World Bank and sue there. But they're not going to let irony or hypocrisy get in the way of a multi-billion-dollar suit. And so when Trump says that he heard from people that he trusts, Trump has a lot of friends in the crypto world. So is this a massive win, no matter who wins, between the Liberal and National Party? Is this a massive win for the crypto folks? Are they going to be able to kind of have their way with these zones? And then just real quickly, do you think I'm right that Castro wins re-election if she's able to run?
It's hard to know how that would have played out. I think she was individually more popular. There was a lot of disappointment. I mentioned this in the dispatch that we published just this morning within the social movements, right? Sort of the non-parliamentary left as well. I talked to people who were scared of a right-wing return, but still couldn't stomach voting for Libre again. So I think it's important to signal those kinds of frustrations that a lot of social movements express, especially in these areas, precisely these areas that these crypto bros, these so-called libertarians, want to encroach into. It'll be interesting to see, of course, their response. They feel like this is a moment for them to strengthen internally. They obviously had a lot of their sort of membership and their leadership kind of drawn into the state, as happens every time a left-wing government, right? There's only so many activists and organizers around, and they tend to be pulled into the state. And so you'll see probably people return and hopefully that they can accumulate forces and figure out a way to resist this. And we'll see. So it would be difficult to say exactly what would have happened there. But certainly doesn't matter who wins here, the Liberals or the Nationals. This is good news for those. I call them filibusters. And I don't mean filibusters like the ones we see in the Senate. I mean the filibusteros from previous centuries, people who would come down here and act like they could just take over a piece of territory of a sovereign country and act like they ran the show. I think it's far more accurate.
What was the guy's name? It was Nicaragua that
it was in Nicaragua.
That in the 19th century, an American businessman, very American name, William Walker or something like that.
That's right. Yes.
I think his name was. So look him up on Wikipedia. A wild story where he comes to Nicaragua and just says, you know what, I'm going to make a slave colony.
Yeah.
I'm going to take over Nicaragua and make it a slave colony, and does it for a while.
Yeah.
Before he's thrown out and killed. But yeah, you're right. Like, and this is not a new thing. It isn't. The innovation is the blockchain, but otherwise, this is a very old American approach.
Yeah. And I think when you ask about, why did Trump decide to throw his weight behind Tito Asfura, from what I've been able to discern, Nasrallah went to Washington. He hired lobbyists. He tried to get audience with people. And it sounds like he really just couldn't curry favor with the White House right now. And as an alternative, there was the National Party. And so that's why you saw this kind of pivot. There's a couple of key actors. Cerimedo is an Argentine political operative who's worked with a lot of right-wing organizations. It looks like he was a key figure. I mentioned this in the first report that we put in. He apparently was working with Dick Morris. We know Roger Stone is obviously a key player in all of this, and he's been talking to, people inside of the White House about, facilitating this support. But I think obviously, they have his ear. He went through with the pardon. He deliberately intervened on behalf of this. So anyway, in any case, if the National win, as you just described, Juan Orlando, his party, they were the ones who kind of set up the framework for this to work. That was actually repealed by the Libre government, but there's still a lot of kind of roadblocks out of the judicial branch here that has made it so groups like Próspera is still around. And so it's quite likely that they're happy to have another National Party government. And Nasrallah was very much interested in working and talking to just anybody who would help him get into the presidency. And so he also probably, most likely, made a lot of promises to these same actors. So that is really bad news for those of us who are worried about, these efforts to attack Honduran sovereignty and to try to carve out these spaces inside of their territory that are going to become these zones of, rampant hyper, neoliberalism where there, even national law doesn't apply. And obviously there's violence behind that. And I think that part has to be emphasized, that there is a lot of violence in order to be able to enforce these kinds of zones. And that is a big concern for the social movements as well, because at least they had an opportunity, even if they weren't necessarily consequential, but at least they had audience with the state to seek that kind of protection. That's no longer the case here in Honduras. They're going to lose at least that recourse, which means that really the question is, are they going to be able to gather their forces to be able to resist the coming onslaught?